Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. It's the second game in what's now a 3-game series, at least at the moment, if you don't count that mobile game, which got terrible reviews. And you don't count Roller Coaster Tycoon 4, which is set to come out Q4 of 2014. Second game in a 3-game series that has taken quite a bit of time in my life. I probably played the first game more than any of them, but the second was probably right on its heels. Put a ton of time into all 3 of these games, really. It was released in October 2002. This second game was licensed by Six Flags, so it included some of the parks and roller coasters from Six Flags parks around the world. And there was some of the rides you could use in other scenarios, but there were also scenarios that were just based on Six Flags parks. The scenarios were broken up into 5 different tabs based on difficulty, and they also had a tab for real life parks. The differences between the first game and between the first and second game really aren't too great. The scenery system was kind of updated to allow more customization, and the second game included a scenario editor, so there wasn't really a freeform sandbox mode, no matter speaking. But you had the scenario editor where you could set the objectives and the scenery, and then whether it was time-based or not, and how much money you start with, what the objective was, what rides are available at the start, and then also what rides can be made available through research. So in essence, you could build something pretty close to a sandbox mode. It also had a standalone roller coaster designer where you can make any type of roller coaster with whatever design you'd like without money restraints, and then you can import it. You save it in that editor, and then you can import it in any game that you had that type of roller coaster unlocked. Like Roller Coaster Tycoon 1, you unlock new rides and roller coasters, concession stands, all through research and development. The more money you put into it each month, the sooner it would the development would finish. There was a ride exchange online where you could actually load your saved rides, and then it would allow other people to download those rides. And I remember just going in there and looking at basically the top rated roller coasters and just downloading them one after the other. I probably loaded what was a fairly small storage space. Back then when this game was released, the max storage space was probably just a few gigabytes at that point in time, and these rides wouldn't take up too much space, but in terms of just 5 gigs for an entire computer, it would certainly take up some space. There were 2 expansions to this game, Wacky Worlds and Time Twister. These added new content into the game, such as new scenarios, new rides, scenery, and park entrances. So just gave a little bit more flavor to the game that was already there. It's a really deep game, and it provides a ton of entertainment. So what was the draw of Roller Coaster Tycoon 2? I guess that answer is really twofold for me. You have obviously the part of roller coaster building, and then you have the management of the park. So we'll go into the management of the park first. I've always been a sucker for tycoon games. Really, if you give me anything to manage, I'll manage it. And in the sense of a video game, there's really nothing too boring for me in terms of tycoon games. There have been a ton. I can't even begin to try to name them all. You have Roller Coaster Tycoons, you have Car Park Tycoon, you have Sim Tower, Sim City, you name it, city management, business tycoon game, I'm in. So the park management in this game was really cool. It was a lot deeper, I think, than people may give it credit for. The game is not all just about building roller coasters. You start out in a scenario and you have an objective, whether that's to get the amount of guests you have in the park to reach a certain number, or you have to build a certain amount of rides with X excitement level. There were many different types of scenarios, and then you were given kind of a landscape to build off of. Most of the parks started with maybe 1 or 2 small rides and maybe a concession stand, a roller coaster if you're lucky. But you basically had a large space to be able to do with what you will. And the harder levels would have harder terrain to navigate. They wouldn't be laid out and flat. There would be limits to the amount of space that you started with, and then also limits to the amount of space you could buy, the amount of land that you could buy after that. Each scenario also limited you to certain types of rides that you could use. A lot of themed rides, so certain roller coasters might have it might be a certain type of roller coaster, but you may not be able to use a certain kind of car. It might be a snake car or a dragon car, depending on the theme of the park. And each scenario would limit you to certain things based on that theme. You wouldn't be able to get necessarily every single ride. Again, the scenario dictates what kind of rides you can put in the park and what kind of concession stands you could have. You also had research and development, which would unlock more, but there would also be a cap on that as well. So unless you built a scenario from the ground up yourself and just allowed every ride to be used or every ride to be researched, you wouldn't be able to use every single thing available in the game. Money would also certainly be a factor. You had to keep an eye on how many funds you had. You could take out a loan if you needed one, but you'd have to pay that back. And that usually a scenario might start actually where you have a loan and you have to pay that back, and that's part of the scenario. If not, the overall objective of the game is to pay that loan back by a certain amount of time. So you could set prices for individual rides, per ride, per customer. You could also set a fee for the park itself. So you can set it up like many major theme parks where you just have one fee to get in, and then all the rides are quote-unquote free thereafter. Or you could have a free park fee, and then you charge for each individual ride. I tended to go with that route. I tended to charge for each ride because you can charge a lot more for the thrill rides. They get ridden a lot more, and it would tend to squeeze out more per customer. Just a personal preference, I guess. It didn't really have too much of a reason as to why I tended to go that way. The second aspect to Roller Coaster Tycoon, and arguably the biggest in the entire series, is its roller coaster building. For my money, it's really second to none in terms of other theme park management games that I've played. The depth of it is pretty incredible in terms of how many types of coasters there are, types of cars on those coasters, and just the possibilities of these coasters it's pretty exciting. You can play for hours upon hours upon hours and never even fathom building the same design of coaster, and it's just really it's really endless. And the biggest challenge, really, I think the biggest fun factor for me in building the coasters was not just building a coaster on flat ground. And while there were advantages to that in terms of you could basically do whatever you'd like with the layout of the coaster, I think it was really fun to build coasters based off of the design of the land and trying to get them to fit the contours of the park. You know, sending a coaster underground in a mountain and then have it pop back up on the other side. I think those aspects of building were awesome. And it wasn't just roller coasters that you could design. You could design putt-putt courses, putt-putt golf courses, or mini golf courses. You could design log flumes. You could design water rides. You can design the lazy river kind of whitewater rapid rides. Kart Tracks. Let me tell you, Kart Tracks are a heck of a lot of fun. And the go-karts, they actually have some sort of racing system to them where not every kart is created equal, so it is a race, and you find yourself building these go-kart tracks and then just sitting there and just watching these things for like 10-15 minutes and kind of not realizing where the time went. That is one of the things that I think sets this game apart, is the design of just many different types of rides. I mean, there's not just some cookie cutter build to everything, and that's really what this game explored and what this game opened up. I think it put the game in your hands in terms of how you wanted to play, and really the design from the ground up, and basically building whatever your mind can create. It's a pretty awesome aspect. But you have to be careful, because every once in a while you can make a design that physics-wise just doesn't really work out. Well, and you'll see right here what happens then. Yeah, so I guess there's no way we can pretend that didn't happen. I think we're going to have to close this ride down for a while. But the great thing is you can open it up just a little while later, and people seem to just forget what happened. Oh, right. I knew I forgot something. You should probably change the track so that doesn't happen again. Bring the legal team in for the lawsuits that are about to come down. This has been Tirc from ONS Gaming with Retrospective of Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, and or leave comments to let us know what you think of our videos. Come check us out at theonsgaming.com. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/theonsgaming, Twitter at theonsgaming, and Tumblr, which is just ONS Gaming. And Tumblr, which is ONS Gaming. And be sure to check back with our third and final video of the series where BT and I get together and talk about Roller Coaster Tycoon 3.